Hey, it's Emily. Thanks for listening to Off the Walls. I have another show I think you'll love. My Story So Far is a storytelling podcast that shares moving, surprising, and joyful stories from communities across Colorado. You'll hear unique narratives told in front of a live audience. Find My Story So Far wherever you get your podcasts.
Support for Off the Walls comes from Redline Contemporary Art Center, presenting Making Our Mark, an exploration of Vandal futurism with post-vandalism and graffiti futurism, street art, and mural artists. Through November 3rd, more at redlineart.org. Support for Off the Walls comes from Credit Union of Colorado, offering a 15-month certificate of deposit with a 5.85% return. Learn more at cuofco.org/CD. Credit Union of Colorado is banking members can trust.
You can find Denver's soul on the city's west side in one of its oldest residential neighborhoods. La Alma Park, Alma means soul in Spanish, takes up a whole block. Here, Mexican-American families put down roots and formed a community. In the 60s and 70s, that community stood together against racism and injustice. This neighborhood became the heart of Denver's Chicano Movement. La Alma Park was witness to history, and some of that history wasn't peaceful. Emanuel Martinez remembers one night in particular.
The police came on. They had already blocked 3 of the entrances and then funneled all the crowd into the housing projects. And then they stopped that, and then a helicopter came down and dropped tear gas bombs in the housing projects.
Today, the neighborhood looks really different from how it did then. But there is one thing that's stayed the same for decades. That's a brightly colored mural painted by Emanuel Martinez. It goes by the same name as the park, La Alma. And for some people in this community, the La Alma mural contains a lot more than the figures and symbols and shapes you can see on the wall. It holds memories.
No, that mural represents a lot of stuff. It represents everybody that lives around this community.
It's kind of like home, like it's all family and the heart of the community.
For me, when I see La Alma, I think about the past.
So if this mural is a window to the past, what can it tell us about the history of this place?
This is Off the Walls, a podcast from Denverite and Colorado Public Radio about the stories and the people behind Denver's street art.
I'm Emily Williams. I'm a podcast producer and a journalist, and I love stories about history and art.
And I'm Kibwe Cooper, a podcast producer, musician, and art enthusiast who recently moved from the Midwest.
We're both fascinated by the murals that we see all over Denver, these larger-than-life pieces of art.
So we started asking questions about the significance of these murals.
And talking to the artists who painted them, the communities who inspired them, and the other people like us who admire them every day.
In every episode, you'll hear from new people, artists, activists, community leaders, and you'll learn the story behind different murals in Denver.
When I started working on this project, I didn't know exactly what to expect. But gradually, as we met artists and communities over the series, I noticed they did all have one thing in common. They want to create work that challenges us.
I'm mad grateful, to be working on a project where I get to talk to people like that, who I get to talk to. I call them disruptors, people who refuse to accept what, in my opinion, is ultimately unacceptable. So, yeah.
I think we've pretty much only got disruptors for people.
Listen,
I think that's it.
Those are the people who make history. If you're not a disruptor, you can't change society.
Today, there are nearly 200 murals all over the city. There are mural festivals and walking tours of murals and a city department that's in charge of commissioning artists to paint murals.
But that's not how murals first came on the scene in Denver. In the 1970s, during the Civil Rights Movement, Chicano artists started painting murals in historically marginalized communities all across Denver in what would later be described as the community mural movement.
We can't talk about murals in Denver without starting with Emanuel Martinez, the artist who painted the mural in La Alma Park on Denver's west side.
Emily, you met with Emanuel. I know he's a legend, but what is he like?
I have so much to share with you, I hardly know where to start. I really wanted to meet Emanuel where he does a lot of his creative work, so I drove just outside of Denver into the foothills of the Rocky Mountains to Emanuel's studio in Morrison. This is such a beautiful drive. So I see a lot of green grass, red rock formations. It is a beautiful setting, I think, for an artist studio. It has to feel inspiring to look outside and see this. Looks like this is the spot.
Oh.
Hi.
How are
Hi.
you? Come on in.
Good.
This is where I work. This is my space.
Stepping into Emanuel Martinez's studio, you are immediately surrounded by art. There are paintings all over the walls and small-scale sculptures everywhere. There's a really big window on one wall, looking out onto that view I saw driving here, of rolling hills and red rocks.
The window is, is the best lighting for painting. So when I do easel paintings, I just bring in my easel and paint there in front of the light, and I have a nice view of red rocks. And a lot of these paintings are just older paintings that I did, and a lot of the sculptures in here are a lot of my works, and so I do have quite a bit of work here. As you can see, it's a little overwhelming.
What's something that you're working on right now?
There's a lot of these sculptures, and then I'm experimenting with making them look like bronze with the patinas that I'm putting on them. I've produced a lot of artwork out of here, including I've done sculptures, believe it or not, up to 18 feet high in here, from here to the ceiling.
In Emanuel's studio, you can see all of this evidence of his decades-long career. He's 76 now, and he's been an artist since age 13.
First mural I did was in the Lookout Mountain School for Boys in Golden, Colorado, which is a juvenile facility. At the age of 13, when I was serving a 3-month sentence there, I pretty much started my career there and declared myself an artist. So that's the first mural I did, which was in 1961.
From that moment, Emanuel was hooked. He met an artist named Bill Longley, who took him under his wing. Longley really introduced Emanuel to the intersection of art and activism.
He's the one that politicized me to get involved with the Civil Rights Movement, and also educated me about the Mexican muralists and other artists in the world who were socially conscious and that type of thing. At that time, I was doing just small posters and things like that for the movement, but my real goal was to do murals.
Emanuel knew that if he was going to become a muralist, he needed to go to Mexico. It was the mid-'60s, and Emanuel was excited to see the work of the late, great Diego Rivera, who'd created murals depicting rich Mexican history. Right at this time that Emanuel was excited about becoming an artist and an activist, he and a friend learned about a big project in Mexico that the artist David Alfaro Siqueiros was working on.
He was painting the largest mural in the world, and we heard that he was allowing some apprentices to come from different parts of the world to help paint it, and we decided to go. We had $150 between us, and we hitchhiked from Denver to Mexico City. I visited as many murals as I can, and there's quite a few in Mexico City. And I was just inspired, and I decided that I could probably do something similar here in the Southwest, which, hadn't really been done before.
So Emanuel came back to Denver with a purpose. He was going to fill his own community with murals. And one of the first things he did was paint a mural on the housing projects where he was living.
Literally, it was a horrible place. So I wanted to, beautify the front of our buildings. So I painted this mural along with the help of neighborhood residents there in the projects. We did it in one day, and there was, at the end of the day, the director of the housing authority came with an eviction notice. I had some people that helped me that lived in the projects also, and they were all there, and they just spoke up and said, well, if you evict him, you got to evict us too, because we helped paint the mural, we live here, and there was all kinds of people there, and even the ones that didn't help, I said, we helped. So he was in a predicament where, is he going to throw us all out for this? And if so, that was going to create a problem because at that time, because of the political climate in Denver.
Emanuel was part of a larger civil rights movement, the Chicano Movement, happening in Denver. He was a member of the Crusade for Justice. That group supported the students who organized a major walkout at West High School in '69.
The events you are seeing depict the West High blowout of March 20 and March 21 in 1969. Approximately 150 to 200 students staged a walkout in protest of alleged racist remarks made by a teacher at that school.
The community was reclaiming their spaces, the pool, the rec center, the park, and fighting discrimination. As part of this civil rights movement, the community wanted to change the name of the park from Lincoln Park to La Alma. This park was becoming the heart and soul of the neighborhood. So it felt right that locals would call it the Soul. It took another 50 years before this name was officially recognized. Back then, when the community chose the name, they decided to gather one night at the park to celebrate. A local band was playing and people were hanging out. And while that was happening, Emanuel says police came to arrest a young man who lived in those housing projects right across the street from the park.
The police was kind of abusing the kid a little bit physically, and of course people in the community always at that time, because we had already just went through the West High walkouts and all that. They were essentially angry at the police. And it was already kind of planned, because within probably 10 or 15 minutes, there was numerous police with riot equipment that came in, just moved in from all directions. And they start moving in and shoot tear gas into the crowd, told us to disperse. And we didn't know where we were going to go. We live right there across the street. And, but as one of the leaders of the whole event, we just told the people, we have to get out of the park. So let's just march towards the police department and protest this whole thing of them coming to our community. And the police station really wasn't that far away from La Alma. And the projects where we lived, my wife and my two girls, we lived right there in the middle of that, at 13th and Navajo. The whole crowd was basically trapped. They got behind us, in front of us. And the only direction we had was to funnel us into the projects. All you could do is just go inside. People were just letting us inside their houses. I did it at my house, and and then on top of that, they come with helicopters to start dropping these tear gas bombs on us. But police denied it and said we started it all. And of course, the next day, it was on the front page of the Rocky Mountain News, said West Side Hoodlums Riot.
This work Emanuel was doing, painting murals for his community, was a big part of this civil rights movement. It was a way to give people hope and make people feel seen and heard. Emanuel even became a city employee as a way to keep painting murals. But it wasn't like the mural movement he'd witnessed in Mexico, where the government was funding efforts to have people see their history in public art. Emanuel and the community were really doing this on their own.
I asked the city of Denver, said, look, you have all these other parks that want murals, so will you allow me to become a full-time mural painter and you can pay me the same salary, and I'll paint murals, and I'll save you money, because the city was spending a lot of money removing tagging graffiti off the walls. So it was a lot cheaper for them, since they didn't have to buy materials or anything, to have the murals painted. So, so it made sense to them. So they did it for economic reasons. And I had to get my own materials, by the way. They only paid me a salary. And unfortunately, the only paint I could get donated was toxic lead-based enamel paint. But that's what we painted the first murals with. We had to basically do them on our own, with our own sources of trying to raise money to paint murals in the community.
For a while, Emanuel was able to paint what he wanted to paint. Murals that celebrated Chicano people and culture. In his own neighborhood, he painted a mural on a building in the Alma Park and around the walls of the swimming pool. He painted murals in other neighborhoods too, but some people in the city weren't supportive of these Chicano murals. And Emanuel ran into some trouble when a city councilman asked him to paint over a mural he'd helped a friend paint at the Raza Park.
They didn't want the mural there, and they asked me to paint over it. And I refused to do it, so I lost my job. So that's kind of like the history of the first part of this community mural movement in Denver.
After that, Emanuel left Denver for a few years, but he did keep painting murals in other parts of the Southwest.
So let me get this straight. As long as he's saving the city money, it's okay for him to paint these murals. But the moment he paints something that they don't like with his own paint and his own supplies, with the community's support, they want him to get rid of it. And when he doesn't, they just fire him. Wow. Good job, Denver.
So far, we've only talked about the original murals Emanuel painted at La Alma Park, but he actually painted another mural there. That's the one we see there today, the one that's become a symbol of this neighborhood. But before we get to the rest of the story, I think we should talk about our visit to La Alma Park.
After the break, we visit the mural.
Support for Off the Walls comes from Janus Henderson Investors, celebrating more than 89 years of helping clients with their financial goals. Janus Henderson, investing in a brighter future together. JanusHenderson.com.
Walking toward La Alma Park, I can see how much the community has changed in the years since the Chicano movement of the 60s and the 70s. The gentrification in this community is noticeable. On one side of the park, you see older, smaller, single-family homes. And on the other side, you'll see condos and a campus, an art gallery, a bake shop. But when I walk across the street to the park, my eyes go right to it. A vibrant 40-foot wide mural with two towering male figures. La Alma by Emanuel Martinez.
So when I look at it, I feel like, so first of all, it's layers, right? First, to me, it looks like you have two guardians, right? They're guarding the picture. You have a young man and an ancient-looking man. He's got fire in his hands. And then on the side with the young man with the weights in his hand, you see a lot more modern roofs and chimneys and things like that. And then you see the fetus in the claws of the bird, which is also right behind the guys. And in the bird's wings, you have these two faces. And on the other side, you have a skull. I'm not sure how the skull plays in.
Well, I think it's more of that symmetry, life and death.
Yeah.
The old, the new.
Yeah.
So around the time Emanuel came back to Denver in the mid-'70s, he was approached by an independent filmmaker who wanted to make a documentary about the community mural movement. Emanuel decided to paint another mural at La Alma Park, this time on a larger scale on a brand new rec center building. He painted La Alma with the community. Local kids would help him, and neighbors would come by and watch as they painted.
I sketch it on with a charcoal, and then it's like a big coloring book for the kids, and I have to mix their colors, and they paint them, and then, of course, I do refinement and fix up mistakes and stuff like that. There's a guy that used to walk across, who lived in the projects, an older guy. He'd cross the park every day, and he'd just stop and stay there for 15 minutes and just watch us and all that, and then he'd go. But every day we did that mural, he was always there, and I didn't know who this guy was or anything, but I was standing back and looking at the mural, and here he comes in the morning because he's on his way to work or something, and I just asked him what he thought about the mural. He said, "What do you think? How do you like it so far?" And he just said, "Well, I stop here every morning because it energizes me in the morning." That was a real profound statement to me, and that's really what one of my goals was, is to give it that kind of energy.
When the mural was finished, there was a huge celebration in the park. Emanuel was so relieved that this time, the community could celebrate in peace.
The community, of course, the housing projects, a lot of people were there. The band, the De Leons were playing. It was a really good celebration, and I'm just glad that the police didn't mess with us that day.
The documentary, called Espejos, or Mirrors, captured the joy of that celebration.
The most important part of this mural is that it was, with the feelings of the people around here. And that's what the mural's all about. That's what the title of the mural is the soul, Alma.
Unfortunately, those first two murals Emanuel painted at the park don't exist anymore because the structures were torn down. But the fact that the La Alma mural he painted on the rec center in '78 still exists is a big deal. For 45 years, the La Alma mural has been a constant in this neighborhood. But that hasn't been the reality for some of Emanuel's other murals. There's one mural in particular, Urban Dope, Rural Hope, that Emanuel painted in '77, across from the Sun Valley housing projects.
The community was really up in arms when they let me know that the mural had been painted over. Later, we found out that apparently there was some tagging being done on there, and they called the city to ask, how do we deal with this? And the city said, we'll take care of it, and they painted over it. I don't think they take this, the Chicano murals collection in this city is serious enough to keep providing the money to maintain them, because they are supposed to maintain them. They're works of art in their collection.
These murals are considered endangered historic places. They can be painted over, they could be tagged, and just from exposure to sun and weather, murals need upkeep. Emanuel and other artists need help protecting them. And here in Denver, that help is coming from a place very close to Emanuel.
Well, for me, it's always battling with this. For the United States, it's the country as a whole is a culture of erasure, and it always has been. I mean, we did that when we came here, so it is just kind of history just repeating itself. And it plays out in these little microcosms like La Alma.
This is Lucha Martinez de Luna. She's an archaeologist, a curator of Hispanic, Latino, and Chicano history, and she's Emanuel's daughter. Lucha has been around her father's murals her entire life.
Right when I was born, my dad was painting the murals. In fact, I was baptized in the pool of La Alma Park. Yeah, right in front of his mural.
Lucha leads the Chicano Murals of Colorado Project. It's an effort to document, preserve, and even bring back some of these community murals, like her father's. Lucha says murals are uniquely powerful cultural artifacts, especially for communities of color.
We need to really understand what is a mural. It's on a permanent structure. It's not, on a canvas. It's not like something you can move around. It's not portable. It's there. And why is that important? Because this is like making a space for communities that have never felt welcome, have always been, marginalized, the whole redlining. So if those murals stay there, there's something left of this community. A lot of these murals are, they're portraits of people that actually lived in this community. So once that mural's gone, everything's gone.
Lucha knows what murals can mean to people because she knows what they meant to her when she was growing up, watching her father.
I consider myself extremely fortunate that I grew up around art, where all of the art my dad painted, the people look like me. So I never had that feeling that I didn't belong, because it's like, wow, we mean enough where we're being portrayed in sculpture, in painting, because they didn't treat you like that in school. They treated you like you meant nothing, that you had no value whatsoever. But so where you looked for that value was in your community and in your home. And to be able to see that in art, that's what was so impactful about these murals. It was at a monumental scale. And a lot of times these artists were painting portraits of children in the community. And to see yourself at a monumental scale was incredible. And then to hear the remarks of the people when they were looking at these murals, you could tell the energy was just going into them. And their pride, too. You could see them stand up differently.
Lucha says that because these murals instilled so much pride, losing one can make people feel like they're losing a part of themselves. And that's why she's so passionate about protecting them. Sitting around a table in Emanuel's studio, I got to listen to Lucha and Emanuel talk about murals with each other. The artist and the archaeologist, the father and daughter, equally passionate about what this kind of art can mean to people.
We did it from the heart. We just felt the need to show our identity to our community and be proud of it, because we don't see it in the history books at school and anywhere else. So might as well do it on the murals, and people respect that. They like to see a reflection of themselves in a positive light, and that's what La Alma does.
A mural can take you back in time and tell your descendants, we were here, we belonged here. That's what's so important, is our descendants need to be able to link their ancestors to a space, to a place. All of them. It doesn't matter what color skin you are. It doesn't matter. All of us have the right to do that.
At the beginning of this story, I wanted to understand what it meant for a mural to be a window to the past. Emanuel and Lucha made it clear to me. History isn't always in our textbooks. So much of history is left out of textbooks. History can live on walls. We just have to look more closely. I wanted to know what Kibwe thought about this.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is a quote, which I'm going to botch very badly, from James Baldwin, who's a African-American author. And one of the things that he said was, to be born African American is to be born with no memory of who you are and no privilege. And I think about that when I'm listening to Lucha talk about the importance of being represented, of being seen in public spaces and being displayed and depicted with honor and dignity. And so when I'm listening to Lucha talk about what these murals mean to the community, I feel that deep in my bones, because as a Black boy growing up, that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see myself in high places doing things that were positive in the community. Representation in public art is vital for communities that have been historically marginalized. But that's the beginning of this conversation. What do you think, Emily?
I think a lot of times there can just be a lot deeper conversation about these murals than what it typically is, which is typically just, there's this cool mural I saw on this street, or this, it's aesthetic.
That's good.
You can visit the La Alma mural at 1325 West 11th Avenue in Denver.
And you can find a map of more Chicano murals in Denver and other parts of Colorado at chicanomuralsofcolorado.com.
You can find photos of the La Alma mural on CPR.org. There's a link in the show notes.
We're the hosts of Off the Walls. I'm Kibwe Cooper.
I'm Emily Williams. This episode was written and reported by us, Kibwe Cooper and Emily Williams. It was mixed by Kibwe Cooper. Our editor is Joe Erickson. Brad Turner is our executive producer. Off the Walls is a production of Denverite and Colorado Public Radio, part of the NPR network.
Support for Off the Walls comes from Redline Contemporary Art Center, presenting Making Our Mark, an exploration of vandal futurism with post-vandalism and graffiti futurism, street art, and mural artists. Through November 3rd, more at redlineart.org. Support for Off the Walls comes from Credit Union of Colorado, offering a new Visa Signature credit card with 2% cashback rewards on all purchases. Credit Union of Colorado is banking members can trust. More at cuofco.org/signature.
Hey, it's Emily. Our team has been working on this podcast over the past year. If you love this show and believe in elevating the voices of artists, do us a favor. Please take some time to rate or review this podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It helps other people find Off the Walls. Thanks for listening.